As Atletico Madrid agree a £34 million fee with Chelsea, it is now up to Conor Gallagher. Will he head to Spain and start a new chapter under Diego Simeone? Or Mikel Merino could be making the journey from Spain to England. Arsenal are interested in the Euro 2024 winner as Mikel Arteta continues to reshape his squad. Hi there, welcome along to the Transfer Show. Lots to get through this evening. Mark McAdam, James Savundra here alongside me to take us through it all. Now, we've already mentioned Mikel Merino. Another of Spain's Euro winners is wanted by Barcelona. We'll bring you up to date with their pursuit of Dani Olmo. João Neves is leaving Benfica for Paris Saint-Germain, but could that have a knock-on effect for Manchester United and their interest in Manuel Ugarte? Speaking of United, as the extent of Lenny Yoro's injury is revealed, we will look at what his 3-month absence might mean for the remainder of his new club's summer window. So plenty to get through, and Chelsea fans will get to Conor Gallagher very, very shortly. But we're going to start off with some breaking news. And Mark McAdam, it involves Newcastle. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is the way we love to start the show, isn't it? With some big breaking transfer news, and it concerns Newcastle. Been fairly quiet over the course of this window so far. We know they sold a lot of players before the PSR deadline, but fans are desperate for new incomings. And we've got some news on a potential new striker, William Osula, the young 20-year-old Sheffield United striker. We understand the two clubs are in advanced talks with regards to a deal for the youngster, who can also play wide left as well. The deal we understand to be worth 10 million with 5 million in add-ons. This is literally a story that's just come to us in the last few moments as we were getting ready to go on air, so we'll try and flesh out the details at the moment. But clearly, when you look at the type of players that Newcastle and Eddie Howe have recruited over the course of the last 2.5 years, they've been young, exciting players that they can develop and mould and grow into Premier League superstars. And Osula certainly would fit that bracket. It also gives you a little indication as to where they're at potentially financially. But I think the significant thing is they were looking for reinforcements up top, and potentially they could be on the verge of an exciting striker that made 21 appearances in the Premier League for Sheffield United last season.
Now, look, I know that you guys always deal in the breaking news when it comes to transfers, right? However, I'm going to do one now, if that's OK. Crystal Palace have just confirmed the signing of Ismaila Sarr. So he returns to the Premier League, of course, formerly with Watford. It is a 5-year deal, their third summer signing, and we will get to that story in a little bit more detail later on in the show. But Palace are making moves under Oliver Glasner, wanting to strengthen after the strong end to last season. OK, let's get to Chelsea, shall we? As previously advertised, the man who captained them for much of last season, Conor Gallagher. So Mark, let's come back to you on this one. What is the news on Gallagher as things stand right now?
This is one to keep an eye on because it develops hour by hour, and it feels like we've been talking about Conor Gallagher every transfer window for the last 2 or 3 years. There's been a lot of speculation and talk about him. We know that he's entering the final year of his Chelsea contract at the moment. Now, the latest as of right now is that both Chelsea and Atletico Madrid have agreed a deal worth €40 million, which is around £34 million for the 24-year-old midfielder. However, as things stand, Conor Gallagher is currently considering his options. The fact that he's not jumped on a plane to head out to Madrid shows you a little bit perhaps where his head is at with this situation. There are no plans to travel out to Madrid at the moment or discuss personal terms. Atletico Madrid are still keeping their options open and potentially looking at other midfield options as well. So I think that shows where they're at in terms of the confidence to potentially get this deal over the line. Be interesting to see if this man is picking up the phone to Kieran Trippier, who of course played under Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid, won a La Liga title as well whilst he was there. So he might have that conversation to say, actually, is this the right option for me right now? Also, by stalling, it just gives maybe those other clubs that potentially could be interested in doing a deal for Gallagher the opportunity to line up the dominoes and say, actually, we will also match what you've agreed with Atletico Madrid. Should Chelsea also say, yeah, no, we're happy with that deal, regardless of where he goes. Our understanding is that he would rather go, they would rather he went to La Liga than stayed in the Premier League.
Yeah, OK, so that's interesting, isn't it? Because Gallagher, as you mentioned, always of interest to lots of other clubs. But James, I mean, he was offered a contract at Chelsea, so what was up with that?
Yeah, a really interesting situation Conor Gallagher finds himself in. 1 year left on his contract. He can leave as a free agent in the summer. In fact, in January, he could start speaking to European clubs and agree a pre-contract agreement about joining them next summer. One thing we know, he's turned down a new contract offer from Chelsea. 2 years with the option of a further year. He turned that down. He turned down another contract offer earlier on this summer as well. 2 years ago, back in 2022. And he wasn't as integral to Chelsea's plans as he has been in the last few seasons. He turned down a contract offer then. I think that was largely due to the fact uncertainty around his position at the club and first team minutes. That's very different now. Conor Gallagher played pretty much 50 times with Chelsea in all competitions last season. One of the shining lights alongside Cole Palmer. And we understand in terms of this contract offer, in terms of the amount of money offered, similar to other midfielders, other players in the same position as him. But I think it's worth bearing in mind that contract offer we say there, 2 years plus the option of a further year. Let's look at the contract offers Chelsea have been giving out in recent years to the other midfielders, the likes of Moises Caicedo. An 8-year contract he was given last summer. Enzo Fernandez, 8, potentially a 9-year contract he was given then. So you can understand why Conor Gallagher is in a really good situation himself. He can decide what he wants to do next. Chelsea have agreed this deal at Atletico Madrid. I think when you consider the player he is, they're very reluctant to let him go to another Premier League club. And that is why they've agreed a deal slightly lower with Atletico Madrid than they'd have asked for from a Premier League club, simply because they don't want to be playing against this man next season.
Yeah, they don't want to sell to a rival. And you mentioned, James, that the number of games that he played for Chelsea last season, given the fact that he was one of the first names on the team sheet and also captain as well, what are they losing from the midfield if they let him go?
Well, they're losing someone that's homegrown, someone that the fans identify with, someone that's come through the academy, someone, when you speak to any Chelsea fan, you know, a lot of their success is players that have come through that system. And that was something that Roman Abramovich spent so much money on doing, designing that academy to be the best of the best. And this is the fruits of it. But suddenly, if you're selling those players, you're not seeing them in the first team. This is a situation with regards to Conor Gallagher's Chelsea ranking in the Premier League last season. And you can see assists 7, which is the second highest in the squad. Chances created, the second highest at 53. Again, duels 1. This is where you can see his engine.
Such an all-rounder, isn't he?
Absolutely. The ability that he brings to that midfield with his aggression, determination, work rate. You can see exactly why Diego Simeone is looking at him and going, yeah, actually, you're the right type of midfielder for me because you will give me everything I need in the middle of the park. Tackles 1, 52 first. You can see interceptions 43 first. Again, possession 1, 221 first. That tells you a little bit about his numbers and what he brings. And like you say, when you're playing 50 times for Chelsea, your name's on the team sheet week in, week out. You've got good goal involvements, good goals, good assists. You're at a fantastic age. You come through the academy. You could understand why there are question marks about why this sale is happening from a lot of Chelsea fans. But at the minute, he holds the golden card because he's not said yes to the transfer. This is one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, a young leader in the Chelsea squad, and they haven't always had those, to be honest. OK, let's get to Arsenal now. And they remain in the States on tour. James recently brought in Riccardo Calafiori from Bologna to strengthen the defence. And now Mikel might be in for Mikel. So Arteta in for Mourinho. Tell us where things stand, ins and outs at Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah, Arsenal remain interested in trying to sign Mikel Merino. We saw him during the Euros. He played 7 matches, only started against Albania, I think, but was impressive in that tournament. And Arsenal are continuing to explore the details around a potential deal to try to sign him. So there's been no formal approach just yet. 28 years of age, so a slightly different profile from what Arsenal have been doing in recent time when it comes to some of their transfer business. He's entered the final year of his contract as well, so similar to Conor Gallagher in that respect. So he's got a number of options that he's looking at the moment. He's one of a number of players Arsenal are looking at in this transfer window. And we've heard from Mikel Arteta the last few days. He said, don't expect anything like a £100 million signing of Declan Rice, which they did last summer. But they did say, crucially, they will look to strengthen if they can. And Mourinho would be someone who would add to their stocks in midfield.
OK. Mark, just tell us a little bit more about it. I mean, Newcastle fans might know a bit about him because obviously he was there for a little while. What will they be getting if they add to their already impressive midfield that Mikel Arteta has been building over the last few years?
Well, they're getting a player that's just won the Euros and played a part in all 7 games for Spain.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at any kind of criticism for Arsenal over the last few years, whilst they've been absolutely brilliant, they've played great football, they've got young, exciting players, they're clearly on a good journey. the one thing they haven't been able to do is get over the line and put some silverware in the cabinet. Whereas this is a player that can absolutely done that because he's just proven it with Spain. I think one of the key things about Merino as well is he brings a real versatility to that midfield. He can play as a 6, as a pivot, can also play as a left-sided 8. He can play as an advanced midfielder, so he can play in multiple roles as well, which I think would be a key thing for Mikel Arteta, someone that can play there in different positions. And James touched upon it. He's got that experience as well. At 28 years old, he goes against the grain slightly of what Arsenal have done over the last few transfer windows. A little bit more experience, a little bit more know-how and knowledge. But when you look at the potential trade-off, Emile Smith-Rowe, quality player heading to Fulham, if you could replace him with another midfielder like Merino, I think that would be a real statement of intent. And you add that to Calafiori, maybe a striker, and you'd say Arsenal on paper right now could be the team to beat this season in the Premier League.
Yeah, and we'd mentioned this before in our pre-show chat about being sort of targeted with the signings. Not signing 5 or 6, it's 1 or 2 in the positions they feel they really need to strengthen.
I think you've hit it spot on there. When you look at Arsenal's recruitment over the last few years, they have been very targeted with the profile of player. They have clearly had a plan. We're going to sign young players between the age of 18 and 22, and we are going to build and mould a squad that we believe can go on a journey to be successful, not just for one season, but for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons. And if you've got those players that are young and in their early 20s, when you get to the stage where you think we've actually got a complete squad now, you just need to add to it. Like Pep Guardiola has done at Manchester City. Let's just add 1 or 2 every summer just to keep that freshness and keep that squad going. But actually, the basis of our team is very strong and very competitive. And you get the feeling, because the board have backed Edu and Mikel Arteta, they're in that place now. They've got an excellent squad. They've got strength in depth. They've got good quality players. They've got experience and youngsters. This is all coming together nicely. Now, this man has got to do the business on the pitch because it's all lined up perfectly.
No pressure, Mikel. Proper project, though.
No pressure for me. This is what I'm saying.
OK, let's get over to Manchester United, James. We knew that Lenny Yoro was injured, but we're getting a little bit more detail in what Erik ten Hag's going to have to contend with.
Really bad news. Let's bear in mind 10 days or so ago how excited Manchester United fans were about signing Lenny Yoro. Beaten off competition from a number of different clubs. It was felt he wanted to go to Real Madrid. They convinced him that Manchester United was the right place for him to play football. But now look at him on crutches. And we understand now he'll be out for 3 months because of a foot injury he suffered in his first appearance for Manchester United against Arsenal last weekend. So that's the initial assessment. 3 months he could be out for. When he flies back to the UK, they'll do a proper test on him. And then we'll get a further idea of the real timescale, how long Lenny Yoro will be out for. Now, in the same game against Arsenal last weekend, Rasmus Højlund picked up a hamstring injury. Now, at the time, there wasn't as much concern about that. However, we understand he's now going to be out for 6 weeks. The Premier League season starts in 2 weeks' time, so he's definitely going to miss the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. A nightmare for Manchester United, considering all the problems Erik ten Hag had last season in terms of availability of his players. Last night, some slight concerns around Antony and Marcus Rashford as well. They hobbled off in their game against Real Madrid. We understand more of a precaution with those 2 players, but let's bear in mind how Manchester United were decimated with injuries last season. It's not a great start, and it's not encouraging when it comes to Lenny Yoro.
The thing, isn't it? You know, they wanted a clean slate with the sporting director, with director of football, with all of these new roles, and Erik ten Hag backed. You don't want injuries. You just want to start off clean, don't you? And so with those injuries for extended periods, with Lenny Yoro, with Rasmus Højlund, any chance that Erik ten Hag might be saying, do you know what, let's get back into the transfer market?
Manchester United won't go into the transfer market to replace a £60 million player. It's just not possible. Manchester United also have to be aware and conscious of their PSR rules and regulations as well, because whilst they do have money to spend and obviously turn over a huge sum of cash as one of the biggest football clubs in the world, they still have to respect the rules, and that essentially means 1 in, 1 out. They have to be very wise. You've seen the way they've operated in this summer's window. It's been a little bit different. You know, historically, you'd see Manchester United leaving it late and then possibly paying over the odds for players. Now they're being very targeted. Like you rightly say, they've got a new structure in place with Dan Ashworth, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox. So there are people behind the scenes that have been operating in transfers for a number of years that can bring that collective experience together. You have to feel for Erik ten Hag as well, because he's got, you know, one of his key summer signings injured, out for some time. Højlund as well, who was just developing into the player that Manchester United fans were expecting. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I don't think this will directly affect what they do this summer, but however, it does give them a real problem as they approach the season.
Yeah. OK, guys, we're going to take a brief break. Other side of which, West Ham getting busy with no fewer than 3 big deals being worked on at the moment. Up next, we're going to hear where things stand as Julian Lopetegui reshapes his squads at the London Stadium. From Sheffield United, the deal we understand being discussed, 10 million up front plus 5 in add-ons. Crystal Palace, meanwhile, have confirmed the signing of Ismaila Sarr, so he's back in English football. James, is this a good move for Palace?
I think definitely it's a good move for Ismaila Sarr as well. Crystal Palace have been looking at signing him in the past before he went to Marseille, but now they've got their man. In terms of a bit of background on this deal, he went to London on Monday, had a medical on Tuesday, and he has now been confirmed as a signing by Crystal Palace. We understand the fee, £11 million additionally. There will be add-ons there, so it could rise to around £13 million. And let's bear in mind what a brilliant end to the season Crystal Palace had. They won 6 of the last 7 matches, a really encouraging start for Oliver Glasner. But then he was dealt with a hammer blow, Michael Elise going to Bayern Munich. So they've been desperate to try to find the right man to replace him. They feel like Ismaila Sarr is the person right now who can do a job. And I think they're really excited about that potential link-up on the right flank between Sarr and Daniel Munoz, who was so impressive after joining in January. 4 assists in the Premier League in the second half of last season. He really shone. I think there's a lot of excitement about him this season. So despite the fact they've lost Elise, they have been really busy in this window already. I think there's a huge amount of excitement because we saw Ismaila Sarr for 4 years at Watford, and there was reports about him joining an even bigger club, the likes of Manchester United, the likes of Liverpool. Things haven't worked out as well as perhaps he'd have hoped for himself, but he's got a great chance to be back in the Premier League now with Crystal Palace. Yeah, OK, let's swap South London for East London. West Ham, always interesting to watch in a transfer window. They're one of the busiest teams of the window so far, Mark. Crescencio Somerville from Leeds. How close are we to Julian Lopetegui getting that one done?
Yeah, that one is really close. He's been having his medical today in London, and there's a confidence that he can link up with the squad who are currently in the USA for their pre-season tour as well. So West Ham are getting a player that was probably one of the most exciting to watch in the Championship last season. 46 appearances for Leeds, 20 goals, 9 assists as well. So 29 goal involvements. Shows you a little bit about his quality. He's only a pint-sized winger, but I love to watch him play because he was so dynamic with the way he glides across the grass. He's got pace, good technical ability, and someone I think West Ham fans will really identify with, particularly if you've got Jarrod Bowen on one side, Somerville on the other. I know Leeds fans are big fans of his. He had just 2 years left on his Leeds contract, and that was why West Ham were able to activate and get a deal done. So just a matter of time now before this one gets officially confirmed, and he'll be heading out stateside to meet his new manager and new players.
And who else has Lopetegui got his eyes on then, James?
Niclas Fullkrug, who we saw excel at the Euros with Germany scoring 2 goals on their run to the quarter-finals. Talks are now at an advanced stage between West Ham and Borussia Dortmund around the signing. Now, it's thought that Fullkrug is really excited about potentially moving to East London and joining West Ham. We don't expect personal terms are going to be a problem. Now, as well as signing a striker, they've signed some wingers in this window as well. Right back was seen as a real priority for them in this window. Ben Johnson departing as a free agent. At the moment, Vladimir Soufal is the only option they have at right back. And talks are really advancing now with Manchester United around the signing of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka has 1 year left on his contract. No discussions going on at Manchester United about extending his time at the club. He's been there since 2019. And we know United were looking for around £15 million. We're getting closer and closer now to this agreement.
OK, not all about the Premier League. Big moves taking place across Europe. And Mark, we mentioned Mikel Merino a bit earlier on, and another of Spain's Euro winners could be heading to Barcelona.
Yeah, this was another player that caught the eye, didn't he, during the course of the Euros. Dani Olmo, 26-year-old, played 6 games in the 7 for Spain. Was a big player for them as well. 3 goals, 2 assists. And Barcelona have made a second offer for the midfielder, which we understand to be worth 50 million euros plus 15 in add-ons. RB Leipzig are currently considering the offer and reviewing it internally before they decide whether to accept or reject. One of the key things about this, the former Chelsea man, current sporting director of Barcelona, Deco, has not linked up with the team who are again in the USA for their pre-season tour. He has stayed in Europe to try and make sure this deal gets done. So another one to keep an eye on, but RB Leipzig with a big decision to make, and Dani Olmo potentially heading to Barcelona, a team that he would love to play for, understandably.
And Barcelona, remember, the home of Pedri, who he replaced when he got injured, and Dani Olmo became one of the stars out in Germany. And PSG, another of those European giants who've been active. Who are they after, James?
Well, they've agreed a deal with Benfica to sign João Neves. We understand the fee initially £50 million, potentially around 10 million in add-ons as well. So he's travelled today for a medical. And the reason why this is potentially quite important, because the implications when it comes to the Premier League and Manchester United, because we wait to see what this means for Manuel Ugarte. We know PSG and Manchester United have open dialogue around Ugarte potentially joining Manchester United. That dialogue remains open about a potential deal. Whether or not that depends on outgoings at Manchester United, it seems to be that way. If they offload a midfield in this window, they want to be ready to hit that button and sign a player like Ugarte.
Yeah, exactly what Mark was saying earlier. 1 in, 1 out with team at Old Trafford. Let's stick with you, James, for Nottingham Forest. We know that they've signed tons and tons of players since they got promoted back to the Premier League. So another arrival at the City Ground. Tell us about him.
Yeah, lots of signings they've made in recent time, but they're now refining this strategy when it comes to wanting to sign young, hungry, attacking, talented young players. They've just done that with Jota Silva, who's joined the club today. 24 years of age. He's been described as the Portuguese Grealish. That's because the way he wears his socks, he's got the rolled back hair with a hairband. He can play across the front line, so he can join the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga. 2 caps for Portugal. A really exciting signing. I really love the look of that front three they've got there.
Yeah, and Nuno going back to Portugal. He will know that market really well, won't he?
Absolutely. I think they're really excited about what they're doing at the moment. I think one thing that Nuno spoke about was the fact they want quality over quantity in this window. We know what Nottingham Forest have done, but I think now their third season now, their third summer in the Premier League, they know what they want to do now.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks very much indeed, guys. We are back at 7 o'clock for the transfer show for a full hour. And next, our focus turns to the Olympic Games. Andy Murray preparing for yet another potential final match of his career. He won't want to see it that way, and he goes with Dan Evans against Tommy Paul and Taylor Fritz in the men's doubles quarter-finals.